right. Hello, everybody. That is a little music to kick off today's Candlelight Vigil. We are now in the month of June. Time is just flying by, already halfway through this 2024. My name is Brad Wolf. I am the executive director and host this evening for this really both solemn and inspirational occasion where we are here together to be with some of the hardest parts of life and to integrate them into our existence. Instead of pushing them away, how might we invite them in? How might we be with what is real in the world and see it not as something that we have to run from or ignore, but something that by facing it, we may find our own paths of healing, our own paths of growth, our own paths of connection, our own paths of acceptance for this life, the joys and the sorrows, and see that those things actually connect to one another in ways that make this life ultimately worth living. Yes, we are a nonprofit organization that puts together events like this for communities, people of different backgrounds to come together to see that what we all have in common, that there is suffering in the world, that it's something we all share. And I'm so grateful for you to be here with your candles. I see this beautiful altar that looks like maybe on fire as we speak, but that is the beauty of the flame. So I would encourage you to go grab a candle now, and we will be lighting candles together during this time with our special guests. I want to share a little bit of background about Reimagine, just briefly, so we can get set up for today's event. So love the slides to pop up on the screen and we can get started. Again, thank you for being here with us. You'll see that our mission is truly to help people of all backgrounds face loss, adversity, and mortality, and to create a more compassionate world. And as I've described, we're connecting the pain to our well-being and exploring both sides, not just loss, injustice, pain, isolation, and suffering, but the other sides of those terms. So right, the love, the equality, the growth, and the community. And before we take it any further, just want to make sure everybody is on an equal footing, set up to use the technology that we have the occasion to support us in this time together, which is Zoom, meaning that you don't really have to do much. We've mostly figured it out, I know. But just so you know, we're going to be using the chat function as our space for our honor ceremony today, where you're going to have the opportunity later on, as really the pinnacle of this time together, to share the names and emotional states that we have of people we want to honor, of losses we want to let go. This is going to be our sacred space. For now, would love it to just get that chat going. If you wouldn't mind sharing not who you're here for, but what is calling you to this space this evening. What inspired you to show up? We're going to talk about the who or what we're honoring later, but just where you're calling in from and what's bringing you here this evening. It could be one of our speakers. It could be something else, but we'd love to just get that chat going. And if you're willing to turn your camera on, though you're very welcome to keep it off, we really invite you to keep it on to see your smiling or pensive or whatever emotional state is on your face, just to keep it more human as we are separated by geography today. And then ultimately, maybe we'll have some time for questions at the end or for some comments, but you don't really have to do much speaking. You can just sit back, relax, and just get into the flow of this wonderful opportunity to be together with these incredible guests that we're going to have facilitating today's session. Next slide, please. So I would love Andy, my colleague, to join us here and share what kind of space we're creating. Now, Andy, thank you so much. Andy is really the person on the Reimagine team who's responsible for inviting these wonderful guests and producing this event tonight. And so I want him to share what kind of space this is and maybe a couple words about what kind of space this isn't. So we're all on the same page about what we're trying to co-create together to make sure the values that we share are top of mind and aligned. And we can always use the rule of 2 feet, meaning if this space isn't for you, maybe it's the rule of a closed computer. You can either walk away to some other space or close your computer, but we want to invite everyone to share these common values. Andy.
Thanks, Brad. This is a collective space to grieve. It's a space that cultivates compassion for others and for ourselves. Most of us have arrived here with some kind of pain, and our hope is to help people of all backgrounds and abilities to face loss, adversity, and mortality and create a more compassionate world. It's a space for bravery. It takes courage to show up for others, especially people who you don't know. And it takes courage to lament and to grieve in public. There are few spaces to acknowledge and share all of this. With all that's going on in the world, now more than ever, people need access to gatherings where we can talk openly and freely about illness, about joy, about death. So thank you for co-creating this space with us. And finally, the space is not perfect. We might fumble, we might falter, we might offend, but we ask for your grace. And what kind of space this isn't, it's not about blaming. It's not about imposing religious beliefs and doctrines on others. It's not about providing solutions. It's not about fixing things. Another thing I want to emphasize is that although this may not be a political space, it is a space to cultivate social justice. Our colleague Mazen Jamal has offered this definition of justice. It's an environment of integrity and wholeness achieved through healing and transformation. When justice is present, we can trust that our safety and well-being are valued in a community or society. So this is our aspiration tonight.
Thank you so much, Andy. And now just a little bit of context for what we're going to be doing for the next hour and 15 minutes together. As you've seen here, there's some music. My colleague Dara has curated this gorgeous altar that's going to be the center of our virtual ceremony this evening. And I'm Brad doing this welcome. We're about to move into the candle lighting ceremony. So again, this is your chance to grab your candle. We're going to be getting to that in about 30 seconds. And we have a featured conversation, a sacred conversation that's going to really be at the center, the poetry, if you will, of our gathering together this evening. From there, we're going to move into the honor ceremony led by one of our other extremely inspiring guests. And then finally, we're going to conclude with a candle extinguishing and maybe a chance to ask some questions and make some closing comments. And that really is our time together. I say we get going right now with our candles. So Andy, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Perfect. So if you have a way to light a candle or you have a candle present, this is your opportunity to light that candle. Now I'd like to invite my colleagues, Chris, Andy, and Dara, to recite our candle lighting blessing. We recite this 3 times as a way of really bringing it into our hearts, and we invite you, if willing, to, wherever you are, share it aloud or simply read along, but we can certainly feel the power of our collective intention, though we might not be able to hear each other on Zoom. Chris, I'll turn it over to you first.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
By lighting our candles, we mourn division, terrorism, murder, war, trauma, hatred, and all that is disconnected from love. We honor our personal dead, the dead across the world, and all of us still here together.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to suggest that we all go up to the top right of our screen and transform our view into gallery view. There's a button called View, and we can click Gallery. And now I see all the squares across the screen, and I can look out at all of your faces and your lit candles. If you want to hold your candles up to the screen, let's see if fabulous. Oh, wow. It's so nice to be with you all this evening and to be in community with you. And I'm looking at the chat and seeing people from Syracuse, New York, and Alabama, and let's see, Colorado, and people here for various reasons. We're here to support each other, and it's just wonderful to be in community with each of you. I want to ask, now that we've lit our candles, if we just want to take 1 second, as we've done at all these vigils, is to just find somebody else on your screen and make eye contact with that one square, and in your heart, offer through 3 breaths a loving intention toward that one person that might bring that person potentially more comfort, more healing, more hope. I am going to zoom in myself on Carolyn this evening. No pressure, Carolyn. I'm just going to offer you some goodness. And let's take some 3 breaths together while holding our candles. Let's breathe in and out. And in, and breathe out that positive intention, and out. And in, and out. I wish all of you now a really wonderful ceremony. Thank you so much. It is my distinct honor to welcome our guests, our special guests who are facilitating this evening for us. First, I want to introduce to you Joyelle McSweeney, the author of the recently published poetry collection, Death Styles. After Joyelle's infant daughter died, she paused her writing for 2 years and returned with this collection. Nightboat, her publisher, describes it as a record of daily bewilderments and accidental concessions to hope after a momentous loss. Joyelle has written 9 other books of poetry, drama, fiction, criticism, and translation. Her previous collection, Toxicon and Arachne, you'll have to tell me how to pronounce. Arachne. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It won the Shelley Memorial Prize from the Poetry Society of America. She has received a Guggenheim Fellowship, the Literature Award from the American Academy of Arts and Letters, and she's co-winner of the MLA Prize for Translation. She teaches at Notre Dame and lives in South Bend, Indiana. Joyelle, thank you for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I want to introduce also Danusha Laméris, poet and essayist. Her first book, The Moons of August, was chosen by Naomi Shihab Nye as the winner of the Autumn House Press Poetry Prize and was a finalist for the Milt Kessler Book Award. Her work has been published in the Best American Poetry, Poetry Magazine, the New York Times Magazine, so on and so forth. She was the 2020 recipient of the Lucille Clinton Legacy Award, and her second book, Bonfire Opera, was the winner of the 2021 Northern California Book Award in Poetry. She was the Poet Laureate of Santa Cruz County, California from 2018 to 2020. She's the co-founder of the Hive Poetry Collective, a radio show, podcast, and event hub, and she serves on the faculty of Pacific University's low residency MFA program, teaching the Path of Poetry workshops online. Her third book, Blade by Blade, is forthcoming from Copper Canyon Press later this year. And last year, Danusha was a guest speaker at a Reimagine Vigil with fellow poet Liza Gaffori, and we had a chance to meet you then, and it was so remarkable. And today, we're going to turn it over to both of you to be in conversation about loss, love, and poetry. Thank you so much for your hearts and your words in advance. And I'll just begin with one question for both of you, given we just lit candles. Curious if you want to bring anyone into the space, anything you want to honor or let go of as part of this gathering this evening.
I want to honor my best friend's mom, Diana, who just died a week ago today.
And honor your best friend's mom. Hi, Joyelle.
And my candles for my little daughter, Arachne, and I haven't lit this candle for a long time, and I'm grateful for the invitation and the opportunity to light it again. And I'm also feeling trepidatious about that, to be very honest, about bringing her so presently into this moment. All my poetry has been about her since she died. But that means it's also literally on my own terms, right? Now that this candle is lit right next to me, it's feeling alive in a different kind of way. So I don't know, I guess, as they say in therapy, I'm curious about where that will lead me and us tonight.
Now I turn it over to you two to engage. Thank you so much, Joyelle, for taking that risk of vulnerability within this community to be present with whatever arises. And that's a very brave, a brave share. And thank you for honoring us. And we honor your daughter.
Oh, thank you.
I want to honor just the way that you all set up this space. Is so extraordinary and unusual, you know. I'm sure Joyelle and I both do a lot of events and readings, and it's so rare to see a space created in this way, and really set aside for grieving and honoring the things that we don't get to talk about in the day-to-day, which feels so precious. I was thinking about the writer Thomas More, who wrote Care of the Soul, said that, you know, we celebrate gardens all the time and the beauty of gardens. And something that we're missing is a tradition in this culture of a garden maybe dedicated not just to Aphrodite or, you know, love and beauty, but to Saturn. That what if we had a garden that we could go to grieve? You know, a place to cry and to fall apart, or a place to just be sad. And in some ways, I think this is a kind of garden of Saturn that we get to share together. So I just want to honor that. And I'd love if you would like to start us in with anything, Joelle, with a poem or a thought.
I would like to read a poem, if that's okay, just as a place to begin. So
Yeah.
Brad alluded a little bit, and I just directly mentioned what brings me here tonight in terms of my life story, which is that a few years ago now, we had a little baby and she had an unexpected birth defect and she lived just 2 weeks and then we lost her. And I found that you would think in a situation like that, you know, you would lose your poetry for a little while, maybe. Well, until you could catch your feet back on the ground after such a disorienting and shocking event. But strangely, that is not what immediately happened. Actually, she died in October, and when spring returned, and the baby did not return, I was full of this kind of angry impulse and this torrent of poetry. There were all of these kind of like war against spring. I guess I needed someone to blame, so I blamed springtime. And I wrote this whole torrent of poems, and that became a whole second book of poetry. Before she was born, I was just about to publish my book Toxicon, and then I wrote a whole other book in the springtime. And my publishers very graciously allowed me to publish them together because we felt they belonged together. These books are kind of co-written each other. But when I got to the end of that torrent of writing, I was sitting in a cafe. This is all well pre-COVID. And I realized that I was also angry at me and I was angry at poetry because poetry had come back and she had not come back. And I was writing and it wasn't working. It wasn't bringing the baby back. And so I snapped my laptop shut and I said, no more poetry. You will not write again. No. And like many poets' curses, it held. So years went by and I really could not write. And, you know, at first I didn't care. I was like, look at me. Yeah, world's burning down. Not writing. I don't need to write. But after a while, it became clear that if I was going to survive, and it looked like I was surviving, I was going to have to figure out some way to write again. And so I embarked on this totally artificial writing project, the kind of thing you do a lot when you're a student, but maybe not for your 10th book, where I had to set myself 3 rules. And I followed these rules every day, which were the following. I had to write every day. I had to accept any inspiration that was given to me, no matter how random or peripheral or whatever it may be. And I had to write till it was totally exhausted. I couldn't just like end on the best line or end on the best rhyme. I had to write until I had totally exhausted the topic. And I did this for quite some time. And before I knew it, well, not before I knew it, in the course of all those days, all those many, many days, I had written a new book called Death Styles. And even though it's called Death Styles, what it's really about is how do you walk that line of survival when you're still ambivalent about surviving, when you're still not really sure if you want to survive, but you have to. I have other kids, other responsibilities. How do you stand? How do you put your foot on the ground? How do you put your hand to a pen and the pen to the paper? How do you pour milk in a glass? Like, what is the choreography? What is the style? What are the gestures? What is the rhythm of staying on the planet? And that's what this book records, is me learning that choreography again. So I'll just read one poem and then hand it over to Danusha. So because I live in the Rust Belt, another thing that's also with me all the time is this region of the country, which is, you know, part still very much post-industrial, but part really remarkable acts of life by really unexpected agents, including the one who inspired this poem, which is a merganser duck. So a merganser duck it's not like a mallard with a green head. It's a little black duck, and when it turns its head this way, you can see a big white circle here, almost like a clock face. And I guess one day I was walking my dog and I saw this stylish duck, and I just knew that was that day's Death Style. So this poem is kind of a conversation, you could say, between me and this duck. So let me get it. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So this is the Death Style of January 8th, 2021. And it's on page 83. And it's called On the Hooded Merganser, That Clock-Faced Duck. Have a little drink of water. Here it goes. A black-bordered letter arrives from your mother. I mean, mother me, the mother duck who rides on the river, pulls up her hood to deliver the letter. The hood and the letter are made of the river. You're gonna swim in this river, you gotta take off that sweatshirt you've been wearing forever. You mean the only thing holding me up or together? As the paper egg dissolves on water, I cried for my mother when died my bright lyre. At eye rise, the thought of her streams through the ether, like a yolk in its vapor consumes its own sulfur, leaves that duck egg green aura on the brow of dawn. And yet I still see from my blind in the river that bright broken boat tow drives only away. Which shoreline are I sore now should I row for? Now with my army green feathers and sweatshirt, like a storm front from heaven wears flag rags and mud. This sewer runs straight from the grate to the gut of the river. This lead shot in duck brain can't suck, can't drain, can't learn the names of your mother from before you were born, can't speak them from inside the egg if it doesn't want to be born, but rolls away to hide its face like a dime or a duck stuck in coin slot or grate. This sweatshirt bird can't go, can't stay, can't dawn, fold her arms around her egg, around her day. So that's my conversation with the duck, or rather what the duck had to say to me.
Like a song almost in the way that you give it, you know, the way you deliver that to us. But that sense of can't go, can't stay, can't hold her arms around that egg.
Yeah.
You know, in the way that we see in the world these mirrors, like, oh yeah, that's like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's an ambiguity through the whole book, and I think it speaks to what you're talking about. It's like, and when I introduced the poem, I'm not quite sure how to put it, because it's like,
Yeah.
I made eye contact with this duck. You know, I felt charged by the duck to like spruce myself up and be stylish like the duck. And I also kind of changed places with the duck and felt I was kind of drowning and being turned and tumbled in the river of days, really. Dawn is my nemesis in this book.
Dawn is my nemesis.
Yeah. Because I didn't want the days, you know, but I had to have them. So.
That's the trouble when we're grieving, is that we have to wake up and remember the grief every day.
Yeah.
In sleep, sometimes we forget it. And we wake up and sometimes it's that first thought. Like, oh yeah, right? We have to remember.
And you feel it like a lodestone, right? Like something is hanging in the middle of you where your heart is, you know, that's where your heart is. But instead, as you lie in bed, I like kind of feel it pointing directly at the center of the earth, right? Like it's right there. You know, there's some kind of cosmic and planetary geometry to the whole thing too. Yeah, I mean, losing Arachne made me feel so much like on this planet, the arbitrariness of being on it, thinking about time spans, thinking about cause and effect, you know, how far back would I have to go to find the cause? You know, if you're a writer, and I do write prose and short stories and plays and stuff, although I think of myself as a poet at all times. But yeah, plot usually revolves around, you know, events and cause and effect and everything driving to its climax. But here was this event that felt so arbitrary. This particular birth defect is not understood yet. They don't know the cause, although it's not particularly rare. So it was just a bullet that I felt like was flying from the Big Bang, you know, to find us, and it found us, you know. So I guess on some level that comment reveals that I do believe there was some kind of impendingness, but what was it, you know?
Isn't that a thing? What is it? You know, I also, you know, just because I haven't shared this yet in this space, but I also lost a child, and mine was a son who had a birth defect that they could never figure out. And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, we're both on that team.
Yeah.
And my mother had a dream while I was pregnant that I was pushing a child in a stroller that looked like he should be walking already, you know, like a toddler. But she thought, oh, why is she pushing him like he can't walk?
Yeah. Oh my
And
God.
that's exactly how that story went.
She was a message ahead of time. Like time gets out of order, right?
Yeah, when you say that thing about, well, I guess I must believe there's some kind of trajectory. I think about my mother. It's always the grandparents who I think see the bigger picture, even in a glimpse, or they have a better shot at it.
Mhm.
And it was that same thing of like, okay. And in a way, doesn't that change it if we think, well, this was coming for me?
Mhm.
So is it mine?
Yeah, and I think blame is that way too, right? Like, um, blaming myself, springtime poetry. I have
Mm,
many other blames I could lay on the table here.
uh,
Because it's like a blame that you want you want to make some sense of it, right? And have there be a cause and effect, or an actor who had a desire, like all the things that literature
something.
and writing is supposed to have, right? Especially playwrights, every character in a play is supposed to want something. That's often what you're taught. So who wanted this and what did they want it for? I don't know.
And are we the heroine in the story? Are we the villain in a story? It switches how we see ourselves, where we see ourselves too. Was this my
Yeah,
fault?
very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Right.
And the absent child, I mean, and you circle them again and again so that their absence becomes like glows, like a cat whose friction like is like creating sparks. As you move, the circle starts to glow.
Well, shall I dive in and read a thing?
Please read to us. I've really enjoyed spending time in your poems, and I thought from the first one I read, I really understood something about their construction and so forth. So I'm very eager to hear. That's your
Well,
sister poet.
thank you. Sister poets,
Let's hear it.
you get to be. And someone's asking here, what's my son's name? And his name was Santiago. But his middle name was Bertrand, which means a raven. And I thought, what did I know?
Yeah.
The raven being a bird that goes, mythologically between the world of the living and the dead.
Oh. Hmm.
What did I
Mine
know?
is a spider, Arachne.
I know. Isn't that wild? Because I think of the Arachne as sort of controlling time, like weaving the web of time, and there's
Right.
a lot there.
But she also is part of a curse on her mother. So
Oh
hard not to
no.
read all that. In fact, my daughters named her that because they were very into Spider-Man at the time. But
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Amazing though. What's in a name? What's in a name? Okay, I'll read a little poem called Haunts, and about where I was living back when I had my son, and I'm actually living right around the corner from that now. I have moved back to that old neighborhood, but here's this poem, Haunts. These days, we like to walk the old neighborhood, down the crisscross streets by the dog park, past the harbor, past Linda's Seabreeze Cafe, past my old house, a not much to look at beach shack built for summer, where the ghost of me still tends my old life. Roses in the garden, laundry on the line, my son in his wheelchair, head tilted up as I spoon that morning's puree. I can still hear the neighbor warming up his diesel truck, the clack of kids next door setting their skateboards on the sidewalk. At night, the saltwater lament of the seals as I lie in bed looking out the window at the shadowed green. It's been a year, or 10, no, 20. A man I did not know then holds my hand as we pass the front yard where the new people have planted coppertip, daylilies, Mexican sage. I miss the way the light came through the living room at midday. The pine out front they had to cut down because it wanted to lift the house up by the foundation into the air. I thought there was another life, a better one. My son's eyes were dark as earth. We had to hold him close at night in case he had a seizure. I would have said then it was torture to love someone, you couldn't save. But what did I know? How lucky it was. How lucky it always is to love someone at all.
That's very beautiful, Danusha. And I'm struck in that poem, as I'm struck in all your work, that time is really the subject too. I mean, obviously love is the subject, but in poet to poet, I feel like time, like I hear your poem begin, a lot of your poems begin with like a, very generous marking of time. These days we do this. And then time becomes so complex, as complex as any structure you could think of. There's the ghosts who are multiple, but in a kind of multiple present tense. There's the counting of time. There's even the time of the skateboards going down that marks a different kind of time. There's tree time. The tree is growing through the heart of the poem, right? And lifting the house up in the way that you lifted your son's body. I hope it's okay to say. And it just feels like I admire how wide you stretch your own arms to hold all those models of time and all those difficult superimpositions, because it is painful in the heartwood of the poem, right?
The heartwood. Gosh, you've got me pegged. My whole next book, I feel like, is about time.
Oh, well, I need to read it, obviously. I need it.
But this thing of how, don't we get split and divided in some ways when these things happen? I know traditional healers go back to the scene of a injury, accident, trauma, to find the piece of a person's soul that's broken off. And I always wondered what was meant by that. What do they mean by a piece of your soul could break off? And I feel now in my 50s, I go, oh, I understand that. I understand that. There's something about going through something so tremendous that there's almost like another piece of you, another you that maybe goes on with their life as if that thing didn't happen. And then there's the you that took the sharp left when you lost somebody, we become these multiple selves, I feel like, in some way. And sometimes I like to go back to the hospital, drive by the hospital where I gave birth and like just tell myself what's going to happen.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Have you ever done that?
I definitely know what you mean. I mean, in my writing totally changed because, like I said, this is my Toxicon and Arachne. It was my 9th book, I think, and this is my 10th. So, I mean,
yeah,
I've been writing for a little while, but my writing changed, and this is not just, I mean, so on obviously what happened would have changed anyone, but on a technical level, I could think of nothing else except this story of her life, which was only 2 or 3 sentences long. So if I had to do anything, a syllabus, an email, a book report, a review, whatever, I had to get those sentences out of the way. So I would just write them at the top of the paper. I had a daughter named Arachne. She was born with an unexpected birth defect. She lived just 13 days and she died. I literally, like a school child, had to just write that at the top of the paper and then begin the work. And then eventually it started moving down. It started moving down into the poem or the review. Or I wrote a little preface. I was part of a team doing a translation and we each wrote a little note to the end. It's in the note. It just started moving down into the writing, and now it's in all the writing. I don't know if it'll be the way forever. In fact, I don't think it will. I feel like this new book, Death Styles, feels kind of conclusive to me for now. But for at least 6 or 7 years now, that I've had to do that, because that story, I love that story. And how can you say that? How can you say I love that story? That's my life. I love that story. That's my story.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I have,
There's something so beautiful about that, Joyelle. Like, I love that that story, that one sentence story of her life. I love that story. I want to see that. It's like a gold, I picture a gold thread through a piece of fabric. It's like, no, I want that gold thread in all the fabric. I want to wear the shawl that gold thread is woven through. You know, I want to tie that thread in my hair. I want it everywhere I look.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. And that's another reason this book is called Death Styles. It's because in immediate mourning for women in our culture is like the one time you're allowed to show how you actually feel through style. In fact, you're expected to do it through style. It's like the time, you know, of course there's weddings and there's this and there's that, but like there's something different about mourning and the authority that, I mean, even, you know, 19th century mourning dress, you know, royal mourning dresses, you know, cultures found a way to do this. Yeah, I'd like to say the world is stopping right now. I am dressed like the night, you know, I am dressed like the end of the world. I am dressed for a journey, you know, and it lasts different amount of times and it means different things in different cultures. Obviously it's performed different ways, but it is usually feminine work. And so I think that's where style doubles back into why the phrase death styles, which I came across in the book Melina, the novel by Ingeborg Bachmann, just jumped out at me and was like, this is the phrase you need. This is what you're looking for all the reasons you just mentioned. Like there is style, there is luxuriance, you know, there is embroidery, there is a shroud, there is a veil, there is something golden, there is something ominous, there is weather here, you know, and it is all a style.
It's so odd. I've written a little poem actually about Victorian mourning. I'm inspired to read it because of what you've just said.
Please read it.
Sense
Please
than me
read it.
talking about it. So, what is it called?
Yeah, please read it, and I'll read one too.
Good. Okay, we'll do this thing. Hair of the Dead. Hair of the Dead. That's what it's called. We all know about saving the hair of the dead.
I love it.
Okay.
Danusha, I can't hear you. I don't know why. You're not muted.
Can you now?
Yes.
I accidentally touched something on my microphone. Thanks for letting me know right away. Okay, Hair of the Dead. The Victorians were known to wear it in brooches, pinned to the lapels of their dark wool coats, or in gold lockets dangling between their breasts. I keep it in boxes, in plastic bags, in white envelopes. My brother's perfect coil, my son's black strands, silky as when they first came in, that full head of hair, a surprise on a baby. How common once, an early death. A backyard cemetery lined with ornate stones, a child gone to scarlet fever, a wife to childbirth, Spanish flu. Longfellow's wife caught fire, it said, sealing her children's hair in envelopes. The match she used to melt the wax fallen in the folds of her dress. When I was a girl, I rode horses without saddles through the dry hills, clutched them by their manes, those fine tethers to hold on.
Fantastic. And that moment of combustion is just incredible.
True story.
I feel the flame.
That flame, you talked about dark dresses and hair and morning rituals. Like, yeah, we need those things. We need the rituals.
So I'd like to read a little poem. Let me see what would fit into the time we have together. So this is a poem for the hospital. How about if that would be okay? This poem is called Hospital Planters. It may be the only poem in here that's about scent. So if you have spent time in hospitals, You know, they have their little array of scents. When we were at the Children's Hospital, there was some kind of incredibly aromatic grass that they had planted. And while we were in the hospital, summer became fall. So this grass was, and its oily, wonderful smell was so strong, and I long for it. And sometimes I can conjure it again. And that's what this poem is about. That's the style icon, is the hospital planter. And this is the death style of August 25th, and it's hospital planters. It starts out talking about a different you. The you here is not the baby. The you here is the baby, is the poet Hannah Wiener, who had all kinds of amazing superstitious and sort of occult spiritual views about clothing. So it starts with a little riff on her, and then it turns its eyes from poetry to the baby. So here it goes. Hospital planters. I'm sorry you had to throw away the new earthenware cup and all the natural fiber clothes you bought at the men's store on the corner, forbearing the taint of men's purple auras, Movine synthesized by some undergrad trying to make quinine and fuchsine, later renamed after the Battle of Magenta. Movine, fuchsine, magenta, and maybe it were better. You were never born. I'm sorry you never wore the navy blue singlet we bought to escape from all that baby girl pink, and we escaped it all right. Even the cartilage on your ears went bent and rigid as a cartridge. You couldn't bear a secret there, even if you tried. And you tried. I'm sorry for that. Sorry we didn't recognize the preparation of your ankles for the sign it was, despite the nurse's signals. Sorry I got worked up about the sore on your knee and exasperated the nurses. I was afraid it would get infected, your little knee. You were just a little fat. I'm sorry we didn't take you out to feel the rain on your face before you died or after. Sorry we didn't take you up on the roof or out on the breezeway amid the hospital planters, pale concrete things crowned with improbably fragrant grass, a precious scent, like something from the Song of Solomon, ankle graceful as an ankle strap, kid soul of the comet flashing by. Darling, I'm sorry you didn't survive. Reverse all bad. Every time the sun rises, I want to crumple up this whole heliocentric universe. Still, the helicopter rises from its crumpled cup outside the hospital down the hill, and I race out toting your foster brother to wave at it. Goodbye, goodbye. Come back this time. Knit booties and the eyedropper of a kitten, you revolved in a cat ball eye till the skin of the water burst like the film where they shoot the apple and its crown drops into the milk. Thread a little camera into the uterus, watch what beats there. So glad you came and went before all this badness of which you were the advent, your name on the parking pass, which for some reason sticks around, fishing itself back up every so often from the muck in the back of the hatchback like a bone in the fish's throat, self-cannibalizing fish, in love enough with itself to choke on its own bone. A leveret and a loach go out rowing in a nut on planet fish in a Japanese song. I ball my hands together and thrust like the parody of prayer or wish just below the sternum and try to dislodge what's lodged. The urging of my digital instructor. I'm renewing my foster license. Just now I want to live on the pyramid, on the money, inside the eye, inside the park. Look out from that pinhole camera at the sphinxes patrolling all the New England graves, not telling their secrets, not giving them up. The hospital planters shake their aromatic heads in the night, in the sodium light. How we petted them, brushed against them like cats, so the scent stuck around in our fur and emanated a third cat as we rounded corners, climbed steps, bathroom, balustrade, embankment, berm, all the locks we had to work to get to your birth, like a couple of tomb raiders infiltrating your sacred chamber, converted to devotees thereafter, trying to live in the tomb. Every time we left or returned, we met that oily scent, more amber than lavender, more persistent, more regretful, more distended, more vengeful. Like a cur, the scent recurs, drips from its own jaw, like in that movie called White God. The teen goes pedaling in the street on her way home from orchestra practice. The whole orchestra of curs rises around her in that organized way of the weather seen from space. Bad thoughts and bad news, a nasal rawness, as if someone had mowed down my frontal cortex, carved your name into my brain. Weather and porn feeds loop and revolve. Everything needs to be shaved, made barer, mounted again. The vapidity of mammals, the elegance of a riparian snaking an egg along its length. Your blade spins closer, spins away, up and over me, and as luckier women stagger the halls, held up by balloons. Oh, get me a beret to hold my brain in. The creek gotta rise in the birth canal, in the parking structure, in the retaining wall, in the hospital planter. Let something rise, then let it fall. No censor, no shanker was ever so bereft of your scent.
Wow.
Wow. I'm gonna hop back in and just double wow into the wowness of what you're both been sharing with us, these words, and we talk about ritual and how within the context of this ritual we are centering poetry, and I have just a couple questions as we're that I would love, as we kind of round up this segment of the program. I'm going to ask two questions to each of you, and would love if you could kind of on a rapid fire way give like a one-line response to each of these questions. We'll start with the first. These are coming to mind as we're in dialogue. What is loss? These are big questions, by the way. Just like, how would you define loss? No,
This is
no time
definitely
to
a
think.
question for Danusha.
Is it?
Oh, we're gonna start with you, Joyelle.
Oh.
I guess it's a kind of, well, it's an amazing question because it's a paradox, right? It's like it disorients and it orients at the same time, right? Like the universe itself, right? Like the Big Bang itself. It's something, it's an absence that the cosmos tries to organize around, and it also throws that world apart.
Danusha.
I guess what came to mind for me is that to feel you've lost something, you had to have cherished it. Otherwise, it's not a loss, it's a misplacement. You know, even I thought of the first boy I had a crush on gave me a beautifully painted tile when I was 10 years old. And I was so sad when I thought I lost it when my parents' house burned down, but I found it. So I think we cherish something, and when we no longer have it or think we don't.
Those are both beautiful responses. You know, I had no expectation, but I feel like your orientation around poetry would elevate your responses, and sure enough, it did. I want to conclude then with this question for each of you. I'm wondering, because you're both incredible poets who have both had difficult losses in your life that you share in common, and I'm sure other losses that are not in common, not in common and not uncommon theoretically. But I'm wondering, as we talk about poetry, because not all of us are poets in the same way you two are. Can you share with us what poetry can be as a metaphor. Like, what is poetry? We'll go in reverse order this time because
Thank you.
It's
you're
so
welcome.
tricky. The first thing that came to my mind was my friend Dorian Lux is a poet saying, poetry must be the best thing on earth, because even when an athlete is incredible, people say, look at how she moves. It's poetry. Or when a song is really beautiful, people say, oh, it's my favorite song. It's pure poetry. And so I think about that sometimes, how poetry must be some kind of elixir that you can mix with anything, with someone doing an incredible slam dunk, or just an amazing night out with your friends. Oh, it was like poetry. So I think it's some kind of elixir. And in my experience in life, it's an elixir that changes and alters things that it comes into contact with. I said to someone earlier today who asked me, is it really hard? Someone was interviewing me this morning from Ireland. And she said, is it really hard to write about these difficult topics? I said, well, yes and no, because when you're in the poem, you're accompanied by music, the music of the language. You're accompanied by poetry. And I thought of that a lot when Joyelle was reading and reciting her work. It's like, oh, that's painful, but it's music. That's poetry.
I definitely agree, because when I was in the NICU, I'm a person of faith, but none of those prayers were in my ear. I mean, or in my mind's ear, or wherever those things are that you hear. And I have to admit that I did not feel the closeness of any spiritual figure from the religion I was raised in, but I felt lines of poetry. I couldn't process what was happening to me. It was so unprecedented for me personally, and like it was so extreme, but it was not beyond poetry. It was beyond every other kind of thought, and almost beyond emotion, because it was so shocking and traumatic. But it was not. It was in the beyond where poetry is. So that's what I think.
Wow.
Well, thank you both for being here with us and being here with us, and for your poetry, and showing us what poetry can be.
Thank you. Thank you,
It was
everyone, for
really,
this night.
really beautiful. And we hope we'll see you in a couple more minutes at the end of the program, ideally. But now we're going to turn to the ceremony. I would love it to introduce to you someone that I have had the chance to get to know well, Dr. Sheila Collins, who has worked for 40 plus years as a therapist, social work professor, and author. And all of this work was informed by an earlier career as a professional dancer. Her award-winning memoir, Warrior Mother, Fierce Love, Unbearable Loss, and the Rituals That Heal, chronicles her journey with 2 of her 3 children through disease and death, leading to her becoming a grief advocate, coach, international speaker, and improvisational artist. Her new book, The Art of Grieving, explores how the arts of storytelling, dance, music, and visual arts help mourners navigate grief, process loss, and find meaning. She regularly hosts programs on Reimagine's platform, and I had the deep responsibility and honor of being asked to write the foreword for that recent release of Sheila's. And it was one of the great privileges I've had working at Reimagine to both read this book and then to write the foreword for it, because the book is really about what we're talking about here. It's about art, but not in the way that we think of art as somewhere out there. It's about the art that's in here and how we might find that art in our own lives, to transmute, to face, to process all that life gives us, and how we might find that accessible. And Sheila is making that known to all of us through her work. And Sheila, it is my great honor to welcome you to this space to introduce for all of us tonight's honor ceremony.
Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate this opportunity. And as I had said to you in all of these meetings that I've come to, all of these vigils, there is so much the elements of different arts. And the one that I felt has been missing is the one that I want to mention and have us play with a bit tonight, which is dance, And as a way of grieving, as a way of living, and as a way of grieving. So I'm going to tell a little story first. And because I'm a dancer, I have to do it physically. So I was dancing at my son Kenneth's funeral. And I'm in the very large room at the American Airlines Conference and Training Center, which is where he worked. And so I'm dancing on his behalf for him. And I hear, what is she doing? Well, I know who that is. That's the 3-year-old. And the 3-year-old is probably saying what everybody else is thinking. What is she doing? So I go over and I say to him, he's in the front row with his parents, well, I'm dancing on behalf of Uncle Ken. Would you like to? Oh, no. And he climbs into his mother's lap. And, but the 5-year-old takes my hand, Ethan. And so I lead him out. Of course, I didn't know this would happen, and we start dancing together. And in the process, I pick him up and I twirl around with him. And in the midst of the most sorrowful day of my life, I am in an ecstatic, joyful place. It's the message, of course, that dance is something that you can have all your feelings, even at the same time, the joy and the sorrow. So what happened after this? That evening, I said to Ethan, thank you so much for, for being willing to dance with me. It was such a gift. And William says, I don't dance. I said, you don't? What do you do? I golf. So I think that presents what another issue with some of these arts is that we're kind of told we can't do them, or you're not supposed to do them. Even the 3-year-old knows it's better for a guy if he's golfing than if he's dancing. So I'm asking people to throw that away, whatever those rules are about who gets to dance or who doesn't, or where is the place to dance. I think that dancing for a dancer, we know it is what we need is an embodied experience to be able to understand loss and to process it. We also need to be able to be with someone in a way so that we can support them as they are having their experience of the grief and of dance. So for dancers, the body is the vehicle to experience and express the energy that's going through it. And I'm going to invite you, some of you, if you're willing. There's 2 things related to dance that we have to know. One of them is stillness. So if you have the ability to have a position that you can hold for a bit, that's stillness. And if you are willing to come on camera to do this with us, I think Brad's going to play some music. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to have you put dancing on behalf. We talk about, I was dancing on behalf of my son. You can dance on behalf of someone or something today, and you can put it in the chat. And he's going to play some music. If you're willing to dance with this, to dance on behalf of what you have put in the chat, then you will need to have a position that you can hold a bit. in stillness, giving yourself the gift of stillness. And then you have to have some kind of a movement that you can do a bit, that you can repeat. And then so you'll go back and forth. That's your choreography, your stillness and your movement. As we do this, you may see someone else's movement and you can connect with their movement. So this is what we'll be doing. Let's everybody take a deep breath together and let it out with a sigh. All right, so start with your stillness, giving yourself the gift of stillness. And if you can give us some music, and then people can chat. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sheila, for showing us the power of dance. Do folks want another couple minutes to add more names to the chat, I wonder? Should we give another, and I'll just invite everyone, if you want to share a couple more names, I'll play a little bit more music and feel free to continue dancing or looking at the chat, and we'll just be with each other for another 90 seconds or so while we enter some more names into the chat. thank you, everybody. Sheila, thank you for such a beautiful offering. Thank you all for these names in the chat, and for holding space for one another for the sacred occasion, because we don't have these occasions too often to honor those that we have, in the way that was described a couple of minutes ago, those that we have lost. But what does it mean to have lost? Maybe that's something different than we thought it meant, or it could be whatever we think it means to us. And so just very, very sacred opportunity, and your presence is really wonderful. So on behalf of this whole community, thank you for showing up here in this way. I would love it, before we move on to the closing ritual, if within the chat now, while looking at the names and seeing what we're each saying here, also holding space for the people who aren't able to share the names, and for the names that are just in our hearts. We want to hold space for all of that as well. But I'd also encourage you now to just share some gratitude for life, and also for these incredible individuals who have helped shepherd us through this space this evening. Sheila, Danusha, Joyelle, and all of you who have shown up. So this is an appropriate time to share some gratitude in this space as we turn now toward our candle extinguishing blessing. I'm going to now share my screen for 1 second here. I'm going to bring up something into the space now. And it is my honor to bring back the 3 names that I just shared, who are going to lead us in this blessing to extinguish our candles. And the way that's going to work is we're going to read this 3 times wherever we are. Feel free to read along out loud. And then when we're done with Danusha's reading, I'll count down from 3. And at the count of 1, then we'll extinguish our candles together as a group. If you don't have a candle, feel free to just take a deep breath and release that breath with all of us who have candles. And if you don't want to extinguish your candle because you want to keep that light going, that is totally your prerogative. Everything and anything goes here that feels right for you. But thank you, Sheila, Joyelle, and Danusha, for reading this with us this evening.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
By extinguishing our candles, we release light into our world to keep alive hope and the memories of those we honor today and tomorrow and for the rest of our lives.
Let's now just take 1 deep breath together. On the count of 3, let's breathe in. 3, 2, 1. And out with love. thank you all so much for being here. We have a couple more things now to share with you as we wrap up this beautiful ceremony. I want to invite back in my colleague Andy, who's going to share about a couple upcoming programs at Reimagine. Andy, I have up on the screen now this wonderful Making Connections series. You want to tell us a little bit about that and some other programs we have?
So in a few weeks, we have the final session of this 4-part series, Making Connections. It's hosted by Allison Gilbert on the epidemic of loneliness. We kicked off this series a few months ago with Dr. Ruth. Some of you may know her as the United States' beloved sex therapist, but she's also New York's official ambassador for loneliness. And Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy was also a guest on this series. He was the one who in 2023 declared loneliness as a public health crisis. We're planning to bring this series back in the fall, but we hope you join us at Making Connections for the final session this month. Also, I want to mention that we're encouraging our community of collaborators, and those are folks like Sheila Collins and others, to host events in June that touch on the topic of loneliness. So I hope you'll all consider that, and you can learn more about hosting an event by looking at our page, let's reimagine.org hosting. Father's Day. We know that grief is a complex emotional state, despite being surrounded by people, by loved ones, especially on holidays. We can still feel lonely and abandoned. So join us on June 12th to prepare for Father's Day the following Sunday. This gathering will be facilitated by J.S. Park and Barbara Becker, both authors and self-described grief catchers, those who catch people as they are falling into sorrow, and at the same time, help others try to capture some comfort. That's on June 12th. And then we have our LGBTQIA Pride Circle. It's Pride Month. Please join us to witness, support, and honor one another in our grief and joy. Often we think of Pride as a time for rainbows and parties, but the mood can shift from one moment to the next, from celebration to grief, from connectedness to loneliness. And it's led by 2 frequent Reimagine collaborators, Butterfly and Phoenix. They'll offer meditation, peer-to-peer sharing in this dedicated container by and for the queer community. We have our monthly COVID grief gatherings and our Room for Grief. Our facilitators, Mangda Sangwan Peng and Garrett Colwell, will be addressing loneliness in these drop-in sessions at COVID Grief Gathering and Room for Grief. June 11th is COVID Grief Gathering with Mangda. It's usually the second Tuesday of the month, and it's a peer-led support group for all those grieving pandemic-related losses. June 20th, we've got Garrett leading Room for Grief, mourning all kinds of loss. And finally, we have our next vigil. We will be graced by another wonderful poet, Julian Randall. He'll talk about his struggles with depression and talk about his new book, The Dead Don't Need Reminding, In Search of Fugitives, Mississippi, and Black TV Nerd Shit. So join us for that on July 10th.
Holy cow, Andy, what a set of programs. You can see that we're anything but not busy at Reimagine, trying to bring these free programs to everyone so that there might be free and accessible spaces to turn toward when processing the hard parts of life. To that end, we are also developing this new initiative within Reimagine. We are rewiring social media from the ground up to create an actual healthy platform. As we know, a lot of the social media out there just exacerbates some of the problems that already exist within our culture. And we are trying to build something that actually helps healing and growing, where people like all of us here can share our growth journeys, our healing journeys that benefit ourselves, but also can help one another by sharing our stories to break down some of these these walls and these silos around what it means to be real with what's hard and what it means to orient ourselves toward what real healing looks like, which is not a linear process at all. And we're all in the process of healing and growing in some way. So if you're interested in being part of the very early testing around this platform and want to be one of the early folks on this journaling platform that we're building, if you want to put your email in the chat right now, if you're interested, we can get you kind of hooked up with some of our early attempts to work on this. We're doing some very exciting things around it, and we've been working with people who have lost loved ones to COVID, people who are experiencing collective grief, all kinds of different pains that people are showing up. We call them sparks, the sparks of your journey. And so if there's any sparks that you want to look into in your own life and journey through, or you've already have gone through part of that journey and want to share the journey you're on, we would love it if you wanted to sign up, and we can let you know when it's accessible for you to join that. Before we close out, and I introduce my colleague Chris for a sec, I want to just say thank you to these incredible guests one more time. I did write a poem for you three, Danusha, Joyelle, and Sheila, and I named it, now this is my own form of poetry, I call it 15s. It's 5 lines and 3 syllables each. And it always works because it's so stupidly simple. And the poem I wrote for you is called Sister Poet Dancers, because you're all such incredible sisters in this work and have inspired us so much. So the poem really speaks, I think, to what you were sharing. So it's we, the words, melodies, sweet actions, life rhythms we can feel. So thank you to Danusha, Joyelle, and Sheila. And then I want to thank the Reimagine staff, Andy, Dara for the beautiful altar, Chris, who I want to introduce you to in 1 second, and everyone who's made this happen, and really all of you who have shown up this evening. Thank you. Every month, these vigils, every month, sad but glad, to mourn, grieve, grow, and love together. And so with that, I want to bring up, just for if you want to hold on for just 2 minutes, one of my most inspiring brothers in arms and in life. I'm lucky to call him my colleague. He's our development director, Chris Thompson, who joined this vigil tonight. And I wanted him to share a couple words about why it matters that you're here.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you to all who just made this night possible. I lost my mom in 2022. She had Alzheimer's disease, and I had the privilege of being her caretaker. And during that time, I wrestled so much with just the know-how, just the loneliness, the feeling overwhelmed, the not having the words to say, especially during the time of COVID-19, where others around me experienced loss. I felt so helpless. And so I'm so grateful that I found Reimagine. I'm so grateful that this work is being done, and why I stand in this role. I'm honored to be in this role because this work is fueled by the kindness and generosity of you all. And so we really want to encourage you all that if you are able to make philanthropic gifts or contributions to Reimagine, please visit our website and do so. If you want to learn more, if you want to join our Catalyst Circle, to really be a part of the plan for growth and sustainability, and to make this space free and accessible for everyone, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm super grateful. I'm super encouraged, super inspired, but most of all, I'm so appreciative of this community. You guys give me life. As we all know, grief happens in waves, and I've been going through a rough patch. I miss my mom's voice, and I miss memories of her before she got sick. And I'm sorry, I'm beginning to forget. And so, even though this is my work, these vigils are hard for me because I have to feel. And I couldn't imagine where I would be if I didn't have Reimagine. And so, I'm grateful for you all, and again, your generosity is greatly appreciated. If you want to make a gift to Reimagine and support this work and continue to pay it forward for others who need this space, please visit us online or feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your also, just with love to you and your family and your mom and all the caretaking you did on her behalf, and then also for the role you have at Reimagine, which is really the lifeblood of all this work. If I Andy, okay, perfect. So Andy's putting the place to for any donations, and also if you want to reach out to Chris, maybe we can put Chris's email in the chat as well, so you can reach out directly to Chris and he can give you the lay of the land if you want to get more involved in some of our initiatives around the philanthropic side of this work, which is really what makes this all go. I mean, our vision is to make sure that everybody has a safe and accessible space that's free to turn to in processing what's hard in life, and that shouldn't be something that we have to pay for. It should be a kind of a right of living in a country that has so much wealth. That we should be able to turn toward community support, and it should also be engaging and connected, like the one that we just co-created together. So that's all we really have. I do want to turn back just very, very briefly to Danusha. If there's any last thing you want to share with your really cute puppy, and Joyelle, if there's any just one line each that you want to share about just your reflections on tonight. And Joyelle, I'm specifically curious about you close it out, given what you shared about your potential apprehension. I mean, it's okay if you still feel the same way. Just where you're at. Just want to hold some space for you, and both of you, just for one sec, to just share kind of how you're leaving the space tonight.
Thank you so much, Brad. And I'm just sitting here thinking, gosh, I wish I'd had this space, so many years ago. It just feels good to be in it. It feels messy and actual, and I felt myself getting teary, and I felt okay about it. And it's just so nice to have that. So I'm really grateful to you all for creating Reimagine, but also for all the faces here and presences in this etheric room that we share together. So I feel really, I feel grateful, but there's like another word under that I can't quite find.
Maybe it's poetry, but I don't know. I'm not going to put words in.
It's poetry. The poetry of gratitude. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I really feel grateful, and I've learned a lot, even just from how you guys have conducted the session, and all the words and honesty that everyone has brought to it. And honestly, if I'm continue to be honest, I think it's going to take me a few days to process this evening. It's been really real for me. And again, like one hard thing about losing the baby is I don't want time to pass. I don't want it to have been 6 years, or it's about about 6 years coming up, I think. I don't want that to be the case. So to have a reason to sort of do the kind of things that were more culturally or conventionally natural to do in the immediate loss, and to take a minute and have something a little more formally shaped with other people, it's kind of taken me by surprise, I have to be honest with you. So thank you. That's going to take me a little time, I think.
Well, we hope to be continued part of your journey in some form or fashion, and thank you for your honesty and for modeling what it means to be real in this space. And things take time, and processing is so important. And so if you had all the answers now, that would be weird. So thank you so much. I think we can end this the way that we end a lot of these vigils, where at the count of 3 again, we can get everyone off mute, because it's so nice to hear everybody's voice just for 1 second, and we can share one final ritual together, which is the only word that sounds good on Zoom, although I haven't tried all the different words in the English language, but I know the word love sounds good when it's said in unison, even on Zoom. So we'll unmute, and if you just want to sing it out or just say love, like, 10 times in a row, something like that, where we just kind of let a lot of love bombs fly. That's the only thing that actually I think sounds good as a cacophony. So on the count of 3, let's just bombard each other with some love and we'll close it out there. And we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks all for showing up.
Love, 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 love,